All right, we're live. This is the first time that IFC is using the new StreamYard component that we put in. Before we recorded these things on Zoom or something else, and then there was post-production work. So we're going to try this. This is my first time through. Megan, have you used StreamYard before?
No, my first time as well.
Okay, so we have with us Megan Hilbish from the Kansas State Rifle Association. She's their new executive director. Oddly, she hasn't asked me for membership yet. If she did, she might be surprised. Pretty much everybody asks me for membership, I say yes to. So keep that in mind, folks. But today we've got something that's breaking. It's coming through less than 24 hours ago. In Kansas, I'm looking over at another screen here and I'm reading from it, and I'll project this up there in just a second. Some interesting stuff coming out of the U.S. District Court for the District of Kansas in a case called United States of America v. Tamori Morgan. What do you know about it, Megan? What should we talk about here?
So this is a federal judge, like you said, out of Kansas, that dismissed machine gun possession charges against Tamori Morgan. And so that was Wednesday on Second Amendment grounds. And there you can see the memorandum order. Mm-hmm. And the court found that machine guns are bearable arms. And in this case, specifically, that the government failed to show a historical tradition to justify their ban.
Yes. I'm sorry I jumped right in there. In full disclosure, I own a Type 7 FFL and a Type 1. We have a lot of NFA weapons that we work on, manufacture, whatever else. And so machine guns are something that aren't foreign to me at all, but they're foreign to a lot of Iowans. And so it's a point of contention that the Second Amendment protects these things, and then individual states, along with the government, decide that they're going to put layers of regulation or bans on them and everything that's associated with it. So when this came down, I was pretty excited. Now, it'll be appealed within seconds. It may be being appealed literally as we speak, but this is starting the ball rolling. What I thought was kind of interesting, I'm looking over another screen here that I kept up so I could rattle this off real quick so that people get the context. Is it okay if I read it? Okay. The defendant is arguing that 18 U.S.C. 922, and that's O, is unconstitutional on its face as it applies to him. And the reason he's saying that is the defendant first argues that under the first step of Bruin, the Bruin decision, which was huge a couple years ago, continues to be huge, the plain text of the Second Amendment applies to his conduct of possessing machine guns. I think that he's right. I believe that he's right. And what was interesting was it appears, and this is the second note that I've got, the government argues to the contrary, pointing at the language in Heller that suggests that unconstitutionality of machine gun regulation would be startling. That's what they actually said, startling. And that the Second Amendment only applies to weapons that were commonly used by law-abiding citizens at the time of the Second Amendment's enactment. Essentially, that may sound like gobbledygook to a lot of people listening out there to Megan, or out there, Megan, but to you and I, what that really means is this defendant made a good case, and it appears as if the United States didn't even bother with their case. I don't think they tried very hard. Is that what you're gleaning from this or not?
Yes, and that it was apparent that there was a lack of effort made on the government side of trying to, defend and oppose what the arguments the defendant made, and specifically in regarding the historical analog that they had the burden of proof to be able to supply, and failed to do so. You mentioned, that plain text argument, from Bruin, that basically the defendant argued that the plain text of the Second Amendment applies to his conduct of possessing the machine guns.
Yeah, I thought that was a very basic argument. I realize that when people are going to cite Bruin, and you're going to hear about Bruin, you're going to hear about Rahimi. There have been people out there. I've been trying to get people to understand what surrounded Chevron deference. Poof, it's gone now. So about the time I was getting people schooled up on what it was, which is fine. It's no longer, but on how important some of these cases are. And I think that we have a window of opportunity, if you will, to correct some injustices, which is really what the court should do, I think, fundamentally, because I don't want them involved in anything else. Although they tend to try and make rulings that alter law or the course of its application, I think correcting injustice is what they really had ought to be about. And it appears as some of these things are going that way. So do you know anything specifically about Tamori Morgan or what happened here, or is there any kind of lore or anything associated with it in Kansas or not?
Well, in regards to the machine guns that he had in possession, one was like an AR uh, Anderson style 300 blackout caliber that had been modified to be automatic, and then a Glock handgun with a switch adapter, as they call it, that's
Mhm.
attached to the pistol to make it fire automatically uh, instead of semi-auto. And so the part of the defendant's arguments was that they argued that what they were calling as dangerous and unusual and highly unusual in society at large, as the government suggested that um, the defendant pointed out that there are over 740,000 legally registered machine guns in the United States today, which in that sense made, uh, based on those numbers, that it showed that the government was failing to meet the burden or their burden of proof and demonstration that the possession of these types of weapons at issue um, are lawfully prohibited by the Second Amendment. So, um,
Yeah. it's I think they made a convincing case. I had a note here. I don't remember where I gleaned this from. I would have to go through many pages to get there. But the note that I made on this other screen is says, in summarization, in this case, the government has not met its burden under Bruin and Rahimi to demonstrate through historical analogs that regulation of the weapons at issue in this case are consistent with the nation's history of firearms regulation. Indeed, the government has barely tried to meet that burden. So I'm excited. I've got to tell you, I shouldn't be uh, quite so jazzed or amped up, but I think that this goes one of two ways. They appeal it, and then it starts moving, and it goes somewhere probably eventually, assuming that upper courts will hear it, or choose to hear it, so to speak, Supreme Court, whatever. But I think there's a possibility this could dismantle something that's plagued us for a lot of years. I don't know. Is that your assessment?
yes, this is a decision that after Bruin and Rahimi, it was bound to happen eventually. And importantly, this decision, um, it did, I will make note that, or point out that this decision, only applies to that case against Morgan.
Yeah.
It doesn't say, or about what the government might prove in future cases, or say if it got appealed. Rather, under Bruin's framework for evaluating the Second Amendment, challenge is made that it's the government's burden to identify a historical analog to the restrictions challenged in this case. So in the future, if it gets appealed, um, you know, we'll see what happens, but it does kind of leave the door open that if they try to meet a further burden to show historical analogs, that would justify the restrictions. So,
Yeah, I'm not suggesting in any way, shape, or form that everybody go out and flip their fixtures around backwards on their 80% rigs. and buy a whole bunch of 1/8" drill bits to cross drill and get ready for all their AR-15s to accept full auto parts. I'm not suggesting that at all. I don't want anybody to break the law and get in trouble. But I will say it's exciting to see things questioned that ought to be questioned. It's even more exciting to see them move based off the idea of justice. And frankly, there was a long period of time that I would tell you that I didn't think justice was attainable through most court systems. So again, I think we have a brief window because I just don't know how long it'll last in order to be heard on the grounds of liberty and the true nature of freedom. And I'm excited to see some of that work from time to time. So that's all I wanted to get across today. I really appreciate you taking some time. Is there anything that we need to know about KSRA that we don't know today?
Yes, so KSRA is the Kansas State Rifle Association. Like you mentioned at the beginning, I'm the new executive director and our website is kansasrifle.org. You can join to be a member. It's very affordable, and that money definitely goes to help fighting for our Second Amendment rights here in Kansas, but also being able to give back to the Second Amendment community, including competitive shooters like myself. And so I actually grew up competing in different firearm competitions. And as a longtime KSRA member, I've been the secretary the past few years, and now transitioning into this executive director role. It's great to be able to fight for what I'm so passionate for with this nonprofit organization. So yes, if anybody would like to donate or to become a member, check out kansasrifle.org. We also have Gadsden flag license plates here in the state of Kansas.
Do you know? Tell me about that.
So they're yellow, and it has the snake, and it says, "Don't tread on me." A very inconspicuous way to show your support for the Second Amendment. And the money that we get through the state for those license plates benefits the Kansas State Rifle Association, and it really does help us be able to continue to fight for the Second Amendment.
I think that's a heck of a good idea. I think it's such a great idea that IFC put forth a bill eerily similar to that last year. It sailed through the House. It went through subcommittee and committee being recommended for passage. Even the last week of the session, it was placed on the calendar in the Senate. They didn't get to it. They had a very long day. They didn't get to it and get it put on there and voted upon, and it didn't make it through. They ran out of time. I don't know exactly what happened, but I can assure you we're going to push very hard for that. Ours is structured a little different. Ours is set up so that you could apply for the money that gets awarded to the NRA State Association, which is the Iowa Firearms Coalition, for grants and all kinds of processes like that, improvement. We can use it for information purposes, all kinds of things like that. So it would be used primarily, or the money that you would pay extra on license plates for a "Don't Tread on Me" license plate would be turned around and run right back out there. So we hope to see, scholastic sports and those kinds of things that are happening at the high school level, where clubs raise their hand and say, "Hey, can we get a little help? We'd like to be able to do those kinds of things." And I think that it's important to get youth involved so that we can keep the ball bouncing. So thank you, KSRA, for giving that example, because I wish we'd have thought of it first, but we didn't. But we're going to take your cue. We hope to see some Iowegians passing down through Kansas with some yellow "Don't Tread on Me" plates at some point in the future. So I appreciate your blazing a trail there as a neighbor.
Yes, you can check them out at 2atag.com to see that design and more information about them if you're interested. And starting next year in Kansas for 2025, you'll be able to customize the plates as well, which is a neat step.
Nice. Okay. Well, thank you for that. Appreciate it. Anything else in parting we need to go over real quick?
No, I think we've covered it. Thank you for having me on. I really appreciate it.
Well, congrats on the new role. Just for anybody out there real quick, if you don't know Megan or you haven't heard of her name, Googling real quick will bring you to a bunch of shooting competition accolades. So she knows her way around a firearm from what I can tell. And based on the number of ribbons and medals I've seen around her neck, I think that she would challenge you for your best. So appreciate your time, appreciate your work, your life service, and thank you, KSRA, for being on. Michael Ware with the Firearms Coalition. Anything else?
Nope. Thank you. Appreciate it.
All right. Bye now.